Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'll begin by reading the official meeting notice. Aldermanic Notice, New Haven. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Monday, February 12, 2024, 6 o'clock p.m. in the Aldermanic Chambers, 165 Church Street, New Haven, to hear the following. 1. LM 2024-0053. Order of the Board of Alders authorizing the mayor to enter into a multi-year agreement with the successful request for proposal RFP respondent to provide facility management services for the central facilities portfolio. Item 2, LM 2024-0040. Order authorizing the mayor or the comptroller of the City of New Haven to execute a multi-year agreement and any subsequent amendments with Zones LLC for OpenGov web-based e-procurement solutions from July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2029. Item 3, OR 2024-0001. Excuse me. Ordinance amendment to appropriating ordinance number 1, creating the position of Director of Emergency Management and transferring funds from expenditure reserve, estimated not to exceed an amount of $140,000 to the Chief Administrative Office, Emergency Management Salary Account. Item 4, OR 2024-003. I beg your pardon. Ordinance amendment to appropriating ordinance number 1, reclassifying the position of senior sanitarian to sanitarian within the health department. Item 5, OR 2024-002. Ordinance amendment to appropriating ordinance number 1, reclassifying the position of management and policy analyst to junior accountant within the Office of Policy Management and Grants. Item 6, thank you. LM 2023-0648. Excuse me. Order of the New Haven Board of Alders amending the established declaration of trust for other post-employment benefits OPEB trust fund. Item 7, LM 2024-0039. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of November 2023 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. And Item 8, LM 2024-0049. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of December 2023 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. These items are filed with the City Clerk and may be inspected at room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven. Per order, the Honorable Adam Marchand, Chair, attest Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance at 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY. Public comment/testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. We will now have introductions of members of our committee, starting to my right.
Alder Sal Punzo, Ward 17.
Alder Yvette Hamilton, Ward 24.
Alder Rosa Ferraro Santana, Ward 13.
Alder Adam Marchand, Ward 25.
Alder Ron Hurt, Ward 3.
Alder Honda Smith, Ward 30.
Anna Festa, Ward 10.
Aisha Walker Myers, Ward 23.
Thank you everyone for being here. I apologize in advance for the coughing. I've had a cold now for it seems like weeks. It just won't go away. I feel great, but I cough in the evening, so I will do my best to suppress it. I have tested negative for COVID several times, So I should be safe, but I might make it an annoying noise from time to time. Speaking of annoying noises, these microphones work really well. It's best not to move them if you don't have to. When someone comes forward, if you need to move the arm, that's fine, but try not to move the base if you don't have to. And you don't have to speak right into it like we had the other microphones we used to have. You had to speak really close into them. These microphones work really well. So you just heard me go through the agenda. It is a long agenda. We have, as a matter of fact, 6 voting items and 2 read and file items. So it is our intention to move efficiently through our agenda this evening in the order in which it was published and read into the record. When makers of the items come forward, please get yourself settled, hand us whatever additional paperwork, if any, you wish to give us. And then once that's completed, we would ask for your name and address for the record. If members of the public wish to testify on any of these items, wait to do so when I announce that it's time to do so. And then members of the public may come forward and give their names and addresses for the record and then proceed with their testimony. We don't have a sign-up sheet this evening, and so members of the public may just wait for the moment when I announce it's time to testify, and then you can raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you and have you come forward. I'll have some announcements at the end of the proceedings about our schedule for the coming months, because we're about to enter the budget schedule, but I'll save that for then. But I want to just say that this is the first finance meeting of this new term, and I'm glad to have all of our committee members, all of the committee members here who are here. We're missing a couple folks who are not able to be here. I want to recognize, of course, all of our continuing members, but give a special recognition to the new members of our committee who are here this evening, Alders Punzo, Ferraro Santana, and Humble Smith. Thank you for joining this committee, and we look forward to working with you. Having said all that, we now will proceed with item 1, which is about the contract for maintaining these central facilities. I see that our city engineer is approaching the table.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Giovanni Zinn, city engineer. I reside at 95 Soundview Terrace. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. And the order in front of you is very, very similar to an order that was passed by the board in 2019. And also quite similar to one last year for some of our previous facility management contracts. The one in 2019 was for actually this contract. There was a 5-year approval at the time. And then last year was for an analogous contract for our police facilities. In, I think, 20-something years ago, the city made the determination to use property management as a model for taking care of some of its largest facilities. I think to date that's been very successful. Prior to 2019, it was a 1-year contract with 4 1-year renewals. Quite frankly, I got tired of having to fill out all the paperwork each year, so I came in 2019 and asked for a 5-year, single 5-year contract, which I think makes a lot of sense both financially and also procedurally, and I think also really reflects what the course of business is, which is a 5-year term. The way the contract is structured is that there's a management fee, and then each year a budget is established based on the budget approved by the Board of Alders for reimbursable expenses such as staff time, contractors, supplies, equipment, and things of that nature. So what this RFP does is it asks the respondents to propose a management fee structure given the buildings in the portfolio, with the understanding that each year, based on the approved budget of that year by the Board of Alders, we would then have what I would call the reimbursables budget. The buildings involved in this portfolio, I called it Central Facilities because I couldn't come up with a better name. So if you have one, please let me know. Government Center, City Hall, and Hall of Records, the Pickering Tunnel, which is the tunnel under these buildings, 424 Chapel Street, and the Dixon Q House. With that, if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Director Zinn. We appreciate your presentation. We will now, well, before we take questions from colleagues, there's a point of information that may be helpful just for us to understand. What's the budget for the reimbursable expenses for this current fiscal year?
I believe it is around, we actually track it in 3 separate pots, so I'm trying to do the math in my head. It's about 1.2 million, I believe.
1.2 million, okay. Thank you. We will now have questions from committee members. And the queue is open. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Zinn, just to clarify, right now we have a 1-year contract.
No.
Is that, no, it is a 5-year.
It is, yes.
Okay.
It was the one that was approved based on your 2019 action.
Okay, and so this is just,
We're doing it again.
we're doing it again. We just need to renew the 5-year contract, put another RFP out to make sure we get the best deal out there. And how has it been running with a 5-year?
So just to clarify, we're renewing the permission to go for a 5-year
Yes,
contract.
sorry.
We're not renewing the contract.
Correct,
It's a new
yeah.
request for proposals. I think it's been going well. I think it's been beneficial to be able to have sort of a seamless 5-year period where we're not, having to do a ton of paperwork and billing challenges at the start of every fiscal year. The facilities are growing in their uses. I mean, certainly Government Center is getting a little older. There's some more capital expenses that we'll be working on. There's some of our elevators in particular have had challenges of late, which we are working very much through. That being said, I think the quality of care in the building has been high, and we think that this model is one that is successful. And now that we also have, 424 Chapel Street and the Q House involved in this as well, it helps all of our square footage have a standard of care that's pretty uniform.
Have you noticed that standard of care? And also, have you noticed any cost savings doing it this way?
I think the cost savings doing it this way, with a 5-year instead of renewal terms, is that we're able to have, if you do a 1-year with renewal terms, you have to keep the management fee the same. You can't step it up a few percent each year. So basically, people would charge in year 1 what they want to see in year 5. So I think that has controlled some of the inflation of the management fee. Comparing the buildings to not having a property management, if we were to bring it all in-house, for example, or something like that, I've done the breakdown recently of that. I think that would be both very expensive and also quite challenging given the extremely large number of different vendors and things that you have to bring in to manage a, 300,000+ square feet.
Okay. So obviously it's something that has worked, but have we run into any big issues or concerns that we need to be aware
I don't think there are
of?
any structural concerns with how we manage this. No, I think one of the flexibilities with if there are challenges or needs, we can flex up and down pretty easily. During COVID, for example, we were able to flex our cleaning up, flex our security up, and then adjust that as COVID came to an end, or ended the some of the special procedures around COVID. So I think that that's beneficial.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Next on the queue, Alder Ferraro Santana, and I'm looking to see if others raise their hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a really technical question,
Sure.
if you don't mind answering. The order regarding the facility management services, and then it says for the New Haven Police Services. But you didn't mention the police services in your.
No, I somehow forgot to save the edited version because I used last year's police services as the template. So I will make sure that gets corrected. I
Okay.
apologize. Very nice catch.
Are you taking out the police department from the order?
The police department is in year one of the 5-year contract separate. So yeah, the police department is not.
So the police department coming out of it, so we're taking it out.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with Parliament. Make sure you have the
Just so
right.
that we can make the change to the order.
Yep. Thank you, Alder Farrar Santana. Further questions for our city engineer? Questions for our city engineer on the request for approval for a 5-year contract with the vendor to manage our central facilities. Seeing none, thank you very much for your
Thank you very much,
testimony.
Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And we will be certain to note that Scrivener's error and make sure that the order is correct before it goes to the full board of Aldermen. Is there a member of the public who wishes to come and comment on this item? Okay. I'm only going to ask once because there'll be all other opportunities for folks to come and testify. So there will be lots of opportunities. So if you missed your chance, you can always come back later. We're now moving to item 2, which is about Zones LLC, having an agreement with them to provide web-based e-procurement solutions, which sounds really fascinating, but I'm not sure I understand what that is. So we are glad to have our staff here to explain.
Good evening, Alders. Melinda Figueroa, purchasing agent, 55 Oxford Street in Haven.
Michael Gormany, City Budget Director, 45 Jefferson Road, Brantford, Connecticut.
So currently, I'm not sure if the Alders are familiar with it, we are utilizing Bonfire as our current procurement software. What this purpose of this submission is to switch over from Bonfire to OpenGov. The reason why Zones is included is because they are the software company we're procuring it from. They have a national cooperative we're procuring OpenGov from. So that's the connection there. Currently, the Bureau of Purchasing has 107 current registered SCD vendors. We utilize, there's 8,279 vendors currently registered under the Bonfire
Could
portal.
you tell us what SCD stands for?
Small Contractor Development.
Thank you.
And there are currently, as of today's date, we have approved over 3,420 purchase orders. And I say that in lieu of collecting this data. OpenGov will allow, through the Alders approval last October, that medium threshold purchase of $5,000 to $25,000. OpenGov will allow our users, our city departments, to put bids out under that software program to the small contractor development. Would be offered first if it's a service or a construction contract. And then it frees up time for our city staff to be able to concentrate on other priorities. So once they load the data into OpenGov, they'll put it live and the vendors within that category can respond and give their quotes. Right now, the medium-sized category is $5,000 to $25,000, and we need at least 3 vendor quotes to make it competitive. And that's what we're trying to give our city staff, the software necessary to go out and procure the services that are needed throughout the city. Anything over $25,000 will still be put on the public portal. City staff will develop the specifications. The way it works now is city staff develops the specifications and sends it down to purchasing, and we then vet it and upload it into the bonfire. This kind of cuts out the middleman where we're just reviewing it. We're not posting it into our documents. Our documents are going to be preloaded to OpenGov, so it's kind of a next step if you've ever used any type of software program where you can't go to the next step without entering certain data. It'll queue you for what data we're looking for. And of course, procurement will always be available to city staff to help in the software process. We do intend to host city departments in a training, and also our vendor side, and get them signed up for the software as well.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Gorman?
I think OpenGov and reviewing with Melinda and the team will certainly streamline a lot of the operations that we talked about, especially as we talked about with this board and ultimately approved by the Board of Alders about streamlining the purchasing process along with the procurement ordinance that was passed. And I think this will also help us in reaching out to local vendors besides SCE vendors as well, especially when the threshold only requires 3 quotes. This is certainly something that will streamline that process as well from the local side. So in reviewing the software, it certainly does a lot of what we're looking to do and a lot of where we're envisioning purchasing to go in the future. I believe that's it, Mr. Chair, and we'll entertain any questions.
Thank you for your concise presentation. We're grateful for that. We'll now hear from members of the committee. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If and when this is approved, do we have a time as to when this will be up and running?
So based on your approval, we can be up and running hopefully by July 1st. We do still have the contract with Bonfire. We have backup, so in case something goes wrong, which we don't anticipate, we do have the backup. We're able to reload onto Bonfire. So with your permission, we'll engage swiftly.
One more question. What type of manpower do you need to run this? Is this operated by one person, or is it all strictly?
Well, typically we have a procurement analyst, a contract analyst, and of course the purchasing agent currently in the department. So any 3 of us can operate the system, as well as the singular departments that we're going to have access to. Of course, we're going to work with department heads to assign the staff that they deem appropriate to work with the program. We are going to introduce it to our super users such as engineering, public works, health department, get them queued up first. We're going to concentrate, but all departments would have access to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Next on the queue is Alder Festa, followed by Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of stay on that topic, it says here the amount for the 5-year contract is the $458, but it includes implementation, site licenses, and software maintenance. But how about software updates or any updates within those 5 years?
It's a 5-year term, so within those terms and conditions, we're guaranteed any upgrades. They're not cost prohibitive, they're inclusive.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The only additional cost would be OpenGov does have other modules that we can look at besides procurement. If we were to look at those other modules, that would be an additional cost. But anything related to the ordinance that you have in front of you, any upgrades is within that 5-year price.
Okay. Thank you for that. And also, if I heard correctly, you said vendors can respond. Need to have at least 3 vendors.
Typically, we like currently the city departments need at least 3 quotes, or they need to identify why the 3 quotes weren't provided. Whether it be a vendor doesn't provide that specific service, they just don't have the time or capacity to respond, they have too much work, but it's different. There might be vendors that are proficient in that category that just can't pick it up. And typically when we get into that aspect, they'll refer us to their competitors to try to make someone else available give the work.
Okay, so if we have 2, we need 3.
We need to document best good faith efforts.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You can't just say, well, I found two and that's all two. We need to know who you spoke to. There's a form we've created in procurement that will be uploaded to OpenGov that has them specify who they're contacted, when they contacted. If they have email correspondence, they can upload that as well, just to give us more information, especially for auditing purposes, for due diligence.
Thanks for that clarification, because I was wondering if 3 don't, then what happens? And we'll answer that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Feston. Next is Alder Walker Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear you say that this new program should help out the local vendors?
Yes, it's another initiative to make it easier to get New Haven-based businesses onboarded. It's not just small contractor development. I was just making the case that there's 107 small contractors registered right now. Those are, disadvantaged, minority-based. But our goal is with this program to do much needed outreach to New Haven-based business and get them incorporated, especially with the ordinance that this body passed in October.
Yes, thank you, because I know we had some conversations about doing that. And then my second question kind of got answered in Alder Hurt's question. You said it will be the previous vendor will be the backup in case anything goes wrong, correct?
We don't anticipate anything going on, but something could, and we just want to make sure we're continuing the business of the city.
And how long would they be the backup for? Is it unlimited, or is it just for the first 6 months, a year? Or?
Right now, we're paid through June 30th.
Okay.
But in speaking to the vendor, they're willing to do month by month as needed. If we need a contract to get us through December, I don't anticipate that happening. I just want them to have a fallback plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker Myers. I see Alder Hurt wants to get on the queue for a second time, which will be allowed. I'm just checking to see if any alders also want to get on the queue. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Alder Pacer Walker Myers raised the question, and I think I heard you correctly, but I want to make sure this is the vendor that we have bonfires through June 30th?
Yes.
And they will stay on monthly?
Monthly.
At what cost?
I do not have that, but I will come back to you.
Okay, through the chair.
Yes, so noted.
And the vendors, just for contracts, you said 5 to 25,000?
It's for the quoting process, the medium purchasing, we define it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Other questions from colleagues? So I have a question. It sounds from your presentation that this OpenGov software has certain advantages and functionality and such. How did it score on cost versus other vendors that you looked at for providing this kind of service?
I would have to get back to you. Unfortunately, my procurement analyst who initiated this process had to go to the hospital this evening, so he wasn't able to be here with me, but I can get back to you on the competitive.
I would be grateful for that, and I hope that your colleague is okay. Obviously, as a finance committee, we'd like to know if we're getting our money's worth. And sometimes it's because it's the least expensive, but sometimes it's because it has the best combination of functions and capabilities. And sometimes it's a combination of those things. And so that would be useful for us to know, like, what really recommends this software package versus others.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like it's functionality, but I didn't really hear any comment about price. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, we thank you for your presentation. And now we will ask if there's a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item before I cough, or even after I cough. Seeing none, we will continue with our agenda. Moving to item 3, which is in regards to a proposed reorganization? No, creation of the position of Director of Emergency Management. Thank you. And I see our Chief Administrative Officer is here and on her way up to the table. We will give you a moment to make your way up here. Names and addresses for the record, please.
Michael Gormany, City Budget Director, 45 Jefferson Road, Branford, Connecticut.
Regina Rushkittle, CAO, 2 Front Street.
Thank you. We are all ears.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get started, I would just like to note, if possible, through the chair, an amendment to the ordinance that you have in front of you. The original ordinance says that we are transferring the funds to the CAO's office to create the position, but we are actually creating the position within the mayor's office. It should have been the funds, the creation of the position and then the funds into the mayor's office salary account. So just to note that on the actual ordinance itself.
Mayor's office
Salary account, correct.
Thank you.
So just wanted to note that before Ms. Rushkittle begins her presentation.
Okay, thank you, August. So as you know, we're requesting the creation of this position, which would be an executive management position as the emergency management director for the city of New Haven. Previously we had a deputy director, Fontana, was appointed to the role to serve as the city's emergency management director, following a stipulated agreement that was put him into that position with the prior administration. And in that position, he remained a member of the union. So this stipulated agreement allowed that Mr. Fontana would perform all of the additional duties beyond his duty as a deputy director. And it also required some additional compensation. And but it did not address the state's requirement of appointing an emergency management director following the sunset of that agreement, that labor agreement. So there's a Connecticut general statute that requires each city and town in the state of Connecticut to have an emergency management director appointed by the chief executive officer, so CEO, makes that appointment. So with in the past, what the city of New Haven has done is named the CAO to that position. And then all of the day-to-day operations would go to the deputy director to run the EOC and emergency management office. There's some requirements that this role and having a union member is a little bit problematic in that the state, as I said, is somebody that's appointed by the mayor, but it also says in our ordinance, they are appointed by the mayor and can be removed at the pleasure of the mayor and also the state's emergency management director. That's not really a compatible position to have someone that's within a union. So when
Indeed.
That's what we have been doing, and as I said, the official title would always go to the CAO. But I think in the past, most CAOs, it was just a title. They really did not fulfill the role. Rick and or whoever was in that position previously. Now with Rick's retirement, the mayor has named me as the emergency management director, as our charter says that you do. And I actually have a background working 3 years as the state's deputy commissioner for emergency management. So it's a good role for me to fill, but it's not really possible to do this, be a CAO and emergency management director full-time. And currently we also have Rick assisting me during this transition period. So we really need to have a position where we can have someone appointed by the mayor as our charter and the state says appointed by the CEO, but somebody that also could be removed for cause by the mayor or the state emergency management director. So with that, we are hoping, when Rick retired, just prior to his retirement, shortly after he announced it, I felt that this, if we're going to do this, this is the right time to do this now. If we didn't do this and did not make it an executive management position, it would go through the civil service process. We would be testing, and we have to have 3 potential candidates that, as you know, extra points if you are a city resident or a veteran, and sometimes that changes the pool of those top 3 that we'll be able to select from. That's basically what I want to discuss with you today. Answer any questions that you have on what we're requesting to be done.
Thank you. Mr. Gormley, anything to add to that?
No, I think I'm all set. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. It's a pretty straightforward presentation, but I imagine colleagues have questions. The queue is open. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I understand we're bringing this position basically into compliance. What would happen if we didn't?
What would happen if?
Yeah, like, so if we decided not to bring it into compliance, right, according to having someone that can be removed or not, will the state allow us to continue to do that? I'm just trying to figure out, I understand the MOU and agreement that was signed, but now since the person is gone, what is the downside of keeping it this way, I guess?
Okay, so that means we would continue to, I would continue to be named as a emergency management director, officially to the state. They already have that. Then the next person that we brought in would be hired off of civil service testing. And it potentially means we may not be able to select the best candidate for this role. And also, I'd hope that, I know the mayor, if ever something had occurred, he should have the option to send me home for just cause. But I'm hoping that the state emergency management director would not have that same, that's the way we have it worded. It's saying literally that state emergency management director could remove me from the city of New Haven, because that's the way the statute reads. But it's just not me, but you know, any CAO, so that's not really a good position to have your CAO in. Again, we definitely, I'm sure you know, we want the best candidate for this position. And there will probably be a pool of very highly qualified candidates. Rick was here for a significant period of time. He made an impact. Many know how he filled that position, what he did in that role. Other towns do not have that. So we want to select someone that would be, you know, of similar training, competency as Rick. But it would be best that they not are a member of the union, or because then we may be in that situation again where that union member would say, these are not my duties. So we need to discuss another not yes, but another, I'm going MOU type, stipulated agreement type thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further questions, colleagues? Alder Smith and then Alder Festa.
Good evening. So I just want to get a little bit more clarification. You wouldn't want anyone that would be a union member to work in the position?
It would be best that a member that can be, as said, that can be removed for just cause, is not, in the union. Executive management is the best position for someone, like that.
And that's in the charter?
The charter says that, right, they can be removed by the, let's see, it's in our ordinance, and it says, serves at the pleasure of the mayor and can be removed by the state's emergency management director.
Thank you.
All set, Alder Smith?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Festa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify something else, so this will be an appointed role?
It would be, yes.
So you said we have a pool, or we have a good pool, and out of that pool, do they have to apply for the position, or you and the mayor or someone from the administration as well would appoint someone?
Yes, well, we don't have, we haven't advertised the position yet. So, because we're waiting to have the authorization to do that. And then, those candidates, once it's decided, we get their applications, and then they will go through, the selection process, similar to when we just hired our DPW. Same thing, review their applications, interview process, and then, a selection made.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Alder Hurt is next on the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this position, and I hear what you're saying, the mayor and the state will have the authority to remove this individual.
Yes.
So would we take away the state and just, or this is how the ordinance is and this is how the state is recommending, or is this the state law?
It is in the ordinance, and I believe it is also in the state statute, but
Okay.
I can, let me see.
Why I asked, if the state is not happy with this person, they can remove this person.
Yes. Mhm.
Is that what we want to change, or is that something we can't change?
I will do my research on that to make sure it is definitely, I know it's in the ordinance. The ordinance reads it that way, so unless we changed our ordinance, it's in our ordinance. I believe it's also in the state statute, but I can do my research and get back to you.
Through the chair, please.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Next on the agenda is Alder Ferrara Santana.
I'm reading the ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reading the ordinance, and it says that under the general code of ordinances requires the approval of the board of alders to create a position not included in the budget as adopted, or to reclassify an existing and included position, and whereas. So right now, there isn't a position available. We didn't create a position for this.
No, that's what this ordinance is doing, is we're asking for the creation of the position. I think what you're reading is just kind of, we paste the entire thing, but yes, we're asking for the actual creation. We're not reclassifying any existing position.
Okay, well, it says as a budget as adopted, or to reclassify an existing and included position, is what it says.
Correct, that's how the ordinance reads it. So,
Yeah.
Yep, so this is just creating a brand new position with a brand new position number, which is why we're transferring the funds from expenditure reserve to create the salary itself and the actual position.
So follow up to that is, so if we're creating the position, we can also create the title.
Correct, correct, that's what we're
Okay,
doing, correct.
I just want to make sure that that's what you're asking us.
Absolutely, thank you,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Ferrara Santana. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Alder Punzo, and then Alder Hamilton.
Thank you. So there won't be a deputy position. It'll just be director. Am I correct?
Right now, we are not planning to fill the deputy position, correct?
But that position is still in the budget? Okay.
Thank you, Alder Punzo.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
just
Chair.
note for the record that those existing deputy positions, if the mayor intends to keep them in the budget, we'll see that in the submission we'll get on March 1st. And of course, this body has the ability to amend proposed budgets. So the question of all the positions within that office, which will, some of them will be vacant, will be a question that we can revisit again as we go through the budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Hamilton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Martin. So, Mr. Jim, the $140,000, is that gonna cover the salary benefits for that position? I mean,
So we are not that, where they are in executive management, that could go up to that. We're not intending to go up to that
okay.
range. I know the salary that we pay our former emergency management director, or actually deputy emergency management director, and that's what I'm planning to try to hire someone with that same salary.
Okay, no additional. Okay, thank you, man. Thank you, Chair Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Hurt and then Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With this particular position, the Director of Emergency Management, will this be a New Havener? It has to be requirements of the person has to be New Haven. Live in New Haven?
No, we're not seeking a residency requirement.
Okay. Okay. Why not?
In the executive management position that would work out of the mayor's office, there's not a residence requirement. And it's not a department head.
Okay. All right. I'll come back.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Thank you for that question. Next on the queue is Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to follow up with my colleague regarding the residency requirement and the why not. And I guess that's something we can add to the requirement, correct? I mean, something the mayor can add, or is it part of the statute or the state require? What?
The state one.
No, it wouldn't be a state requirement, or we're having residence requirement is a challenge, especially in my emergency management. I'm sorry, in my public safety departments. That's one thing, which is why I had a deputy CAO out of the office for 8 months because we tried to. It took us a challenge to fill that role, and because part of it was because of the residency requirement. We had candidates actually start through the process and then let us know that they were not interested because they did not want to have to reside in the city for some reason or another. They didn't have to want to relocate, especially if they already had a residence at another nearby at another location. So then they didn't want to have another residence within the city. We had an out-of-state candidate that said they did the calculations and it was more expensive to live here in New Haven rather than on the outskirts. That was one person that pulled out of our process. So residency requirement is a challenge. HR, we were seeing it throughout human resources. And right now I'm doing the dual role, but that's a challenge for me too if we don't find someone that'll take this role within the next couple months.
I guess it just baffles my mind that we have what did the mayor say the other night in his State of the City address? 139,000 residents in the city, and we don't have one qualified person to fill that role who already lives here. And even within the department, I mean, the whole point of even hiring deputies and other employees is to allow them to grow within the department and prepare them for certain positions. And hopefully they live in the city. So I guess it just baffles my mind that out of 139,000 residents and a department already in place that we can't find. And this is in general, it's not just targeted towards this position, but just in general that we can't find, someone to fill it. But anyway, thank you for explaining it. And now, of course, I have brain fog and I can't remember my original question. Oh, I know, it came back. The fog has cleared. So the position carries a maximum salary of $146,000, but the salary will be posted for $128,000.
Or that's what initially we said, but then I think that's just, we wanted to bring it down closer to what the prior deputy was making.
Which was the 140?
No, it was less than 128.
Okay, but I guess where I'm a little confused is the section 2 of the whereas, the budgetary transfer expenditure reserve account in the amount not to exceed $140,000 to the Chief Administrative Office Emergency Management Salary Account in the amount of, and there's no dollar amount.
Okay, that potentially a typo, when that we can get it fixed.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
may,
I'm
that
asking.
may have been a typo. It should have actually stopped at the not to exceed the 140,000. So when I was reviewing that may have just been missed on my end.
Okay, so I'm not missing another number.
No. That's why we wrote not to exceed, because we were in discussions about what the salary would be. So we put not to exceed 140,000. But as CAO Rush Kiddo just mentioned, the plan is to hire obviously less than that.
Okay, thank you. So we may want to fix that in the.
Yep.
ordinance.
When we're amending it with Chair Marchand, as I mentioned in the beginning, we'll make sure we fix that whereas clause as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on this item? I'll just say a couple things. One is it would be helpful to this, to our board, to have information about Connecticut General Statutes, Section 28(7)B.
Okay.
I'm curious to know, for example, what other requirements that statute sets forth for the position. You mentioned that the question of accountability, right? That this position has some accountability, not just to the mayor, but also to the state's director of emergency management. So I'm sure the statute spells that out. But there may be other things that are in that statute that I'm sure your office is looking at as you prepare to write a job description for it. So I think it'll be good for us to see that language to understand it. So in regards to the 128,000, what gives you confidence that you'll be able to find a willing director to work for that amount? I'm sure you have good reasons for it. I'm seeking to understand why you think that goal is feasible.
I think with the candidate pool that we would have, that would be an attractive salary for someone. Many that apply for positions like this are going on their second career. So if you have retired and you're being offered 126, 125, not many people will say no. So that's an attractive salary. I was successful with hiring the emergency manager, the HR manager. It was a similar range up to, I believe it was 140, and I did not go to that range. One offer, and it was attractive, and it was accepted. So like I said, with the candidate pool, what we're expecting when this is posted, If one person says no, it's highly likely that person number two, or candidate number two will say yes.
Mhm.
So,
So the state law requires all Connecticut municipalities to have such an officer, or is it only municipalities of a certain size?
All.
So then there's lots of these people in our state doing this job. Did you get a sense of what they're making in places like Bridgeport or New Britain or Fairfield or Hartford?
No, I am not.
All right. I mean, you know more about this than I do. I'm just curious to know about that 128. Because part of the reason why I'm thinking about this is that the way the ordinance amendment is written is to authorize up to 140. And I have no reason to doubt your intentions here of what you want to post it at and what you think you'll recruit someone at. But we're giving you the authority to hire somebody at up to $140,000. At least that we're giving you the authority to transfer that much money into that salary account. So, you know, we could, of course, just authorize $129,000. Then you would have us wiggle room to work with. I'm not saying that necessarily we should, but it just makes me wonder about where the figure of $140,000 came from.
Mike, do you know why we went with that?
Is that just a question of salary ranges for this?
That was, just looking at the executive management, salary ranges, I believe, and where it would be potentially placed. The personnel director places executive management positions within each salary range. Obviously, she couldn't officially do it until it's approved, if it's approved by the board. But yeah, we were just looking at the different salary ranges within executive management and just want to make sure we had an adequate number. Again, I believe CAO Rush Kiddo kind of knows more about this, and after the submission kind of came to the conclusion of the 128,000 may be enough to attract a candidate towards the position.
Okay. This is a field that you have knowledge of course. Are you aware of situations when the state director of emergency management removed local directors of emergency management?
Not during the time when I served in the role. I don't recall that ever occurring, and that was for 3 years.
Right.
So it would have to be some egregious
Yeah.
that would occur.
Does the state law create guidelines for what would be fair grounds for such removal?
It just says just cause.
Just cause. Gotcha. Well, that means something in contractual context, in union context. I'm less familiar with what that means in a executive management context. Okay. So the state director has no role in the appointment of someone.
No.
But could have a role in saying this person should be terminated for cause.
And the removal, and like I said, I have to check the state statute, which I don't have with me, and confirm that the removal is in the state statute. It is in our ordinances. Which is, I believe that our
it suggests that it's responding to the statute.
Right,
Why would we write that into our ordinance?
Right.
I wouldn't recommend we do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the ordinance mirrored this state statute, which I don't have a copy of.
Okay.
But I will send that to you.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure that hopefully our staff, our colleagues receive that. Further questions from colleagues on this item? I guess I do, which is in your mind, as you think about the role and as you think about a job description, how much do you want to put an emphasis on emergencies that are like acts of like nature, winter storms, floods, hurricanes, and how much emphasis do you want to put on training to deal with human-caused emergencies, crimes, acts of terror, and stuff like that?
We are having more of the latter, not now than previously. So it's important that whoever we bring into this role will be able to handle both or we can get them quickly trained up. For the most part, most would probably have handled a little bit of each. But if we found that someone their qualifications were really high on the emergency management side with human cause, as you say, human cause, we would then make sure we got them trained up to make sure that they have both significant experience in both. And it may have to send them to a little bit of training, but I think that, again, the majority of the candidates that we will have, they will probably come from a law enforcement background or a fire background. And so they're experienced so much of this already. The weather related, the emergency response to situations. So I highly think that we'll have a lot of qualified candidates.
Okay, I see two colleagues who are back on the queue, Alder Smith and then Alder Festa.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Would it be feasible to do like a lateral appointment from the stage of someone that has the experience in the emergency aspect, as you stated earlier, police or fire?
You mean somebody here from the
Yes.
city already?
Yes.
I had not considered that, but I don't see why that would not be possible.
And what degree would they need as far as to fulfill the position of an emergency? I know most states are looking for people that has a bachelor's degree to basically to cover the emergency management. Are we looking for the same? Are we looking to go even higher to a master's?
No, we're looking at a bachelor's degree at that level.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the letter here, it states that Mr. Fontana performed additional duties beyond the duties of the deputy director. And so will the job description be redefined
Yes.
with all duties?
Yes.
And that person would fulfill the same duties that Mr. Fontana did?
Yes, because he's been performing those duties since the stipulated agreement was put in place.
Okay, so the job description will define all of that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, we want to thank you for, Don Hayden. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, just as a clarification to the amendment to the order that Mr. Gorman requested, where it said Chief Administrative Officer Emergency Management salary account contains the mayor's office salary account.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Don. We'll definitely make sure that gets done in our deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we are now going to blaze ahead with our agenda. Looking now at item 4, which is reclassifying a position of senior sanitarian to sanitarian. And I see our Director of Public Health approaching.
Michael Gorman, 45 Jefferson Road, Franklin,
There you
Connecticut,
go.
City Budget Director.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Margaret Savant, 424 Temple Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
All right. We are here requesting the reclassification of a vacant position within the health department. What you will notice in the ordinance, unlike the previous one, is we are not asking for a budget transfer because we believe that the reclassification of this position will fall within the budgeted salary of what is now known as the senior sanitarian. So I will let Director Bond explain the justification for the position reclass.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening. So I am making a request to change from senior sanitarian to a entry-level sanitarian because we have been having challenges in hiring someone with the extensive experience that it requires. Senior sanitarian needs to possess a registered sanitarian license, which is issued by the Department of Public Health. or withhold it within 6 months upon being hired. Nevertheless, they need to also get 2 years of experience. And so to attract a position and also allow the position to be a tier level to get promoted in the future, we're looking for a graduate who has a sanitarian degree, who can then shadow a senior sanitarian in the current role, and then become a registered sanitarian so that we can be able to make it more appealing. And so that is the request that we are having before you this evening.
Thank you very much for that succinct presentation. We're grateful. Questions from colleagues on this request? Alder Hurt and then Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will this will not require a change in salary?
It will be an entry level position, so the salary will
Decrease?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
So I'll just mention that again, we're not asking for a transfer because it would be essentially entry-level position, but would be adjusted in the upcoming mayor's proposed budget.
Did you want to add to that? No? Okay.
got the mic ready.
I saw you ready. Thank you. Alder Festa.
I think, Mr. Chair, my question may have been answered because my question was, what is the salary difference between the two?
So senior sanitarian will make more money, and so this will be an entry level position. So it's less.
So the 71,270 is what the entry level position would require. That's what I see here.
I believe, and I will double check. Double checking this
so
now.
The senior sanitarian ranges from 68,665 to 71,270. So we would start them at a lower rate.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so we did do a comparison on other cities, by the way.
Correct. So the 71,270 is the current salary of the senior sanitarian. What we're working with, with the job description development and things is, as Director Bond said, this would be an entry level, so it would be below that 71,270 because that's the current salary of a senior sanitarian. Okay,
because I'm looking at the current information, 16005, senior sanitarian, 884, 71,270, and then it says revised information, 24001, sanitarian, 884, 71,270.
That's because the salary isn't determined yet, but we know it'll be lower, so that's kind of, maybe we should have put TBD there, but it's definitely going to be lower than the senior sanitarian salary.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood this. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. I think what we're looking at here is a position listed in the budget for a certain dollar amount. It doesn't require the city to pay the person that, but it allows the city to pay up to that. But we would expect in the new submission that we'll see in just a few weeks that perhaps that figure will be different. Further questions from colleagues on this item? I have, I think what is a quick question. I think I know what a sanitarian does, but I could be wrong. So could you say a little bit more about the duties of somebody who would take this position?
So the duties of a sanitarian position is a designee of the Director of Health to conduct inspections that vary from food establishments to pool assessments to nuisance complaints.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the cohort of sanitarians you have now, are they all engaged in a variety of different kinds of inspections, or do they specialize in a particular type?
They're all cross-trained and have the ability to do all types of inspections.
Great. Further questions from colleagues about this request? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe, Mr. Gorman, you're still with us. Move ahead.
I'm still here.
We're grateful for that. We're moving on now to item 5, which is to reclassify a position from management policy analyst to junior accountant.
That would be my
That would
item.
be
Mr. Chair. Didn't even have to go far. Michael Gormy, 45 Jefferson Road, City Budget Director. So similar to what you just heard, we're looking to reclassify a position within our accounting division from a management and policy analyst to a junior accountant. The role of the management and policy analyst is really a budgetary and policy role. The positions first started out in the Office of Management and Budget, but due to staffing needs, that position was transferred over at one time into our accounting office, and that incumbent at that time was doing budgetary work and accounting work at the same time. That incumbent has since been promoted about a year and a half ago from the policy analyst position. So in reviewing with the chief accountant, we looked at the overall position, and again, when I look at the job description, it's really geared towards the budget office. What we wanted to do was really reclassify that title to more of an accountant position, since it now lies within that office, and to fully function into transitioning doing primarily accounting work. So within the accounting office, we have a chief accountant, a senior accountant, an accountant for it, and then we would have a junior accountant as well. Similar to the previous ordinance, we're not asking for a budgetary transfer because this position has been vacant for the entire year, basically. So there is currently lapsed salary that would cover if anybody internally wanted to go for this position. There are obviously internal rules when it comes to promotions and salaries that we have to abide by in HR. But again, if that were to happen, we would have enough funding to cover that particular promotion for the position. But again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the primary purpose is really changing this to a full accounting role within the office. Again, if we kept the position, that's really geared towards the budget office, which we're working on positions within my office, but that position is currently housed in accounting. So that is the reason why we are submitting the change in this particular title. So, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Gormley. Questions from colleagues? Alder Ferraro Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Gormley. The current management and policy says $74,179. The revised for the junior accountants is the same dollar amount. Are we keeping the dollar amount the same, or should it be TBD?
Correct. We're looking at the posting. I'm working with the accounting office. Again, I think we have internal rules if people were to apply. For example, if someone's making close to that and they were offered that position, if they met the internal structure of how the union contract is based, we'd have to offer them more money. But if it was someone from the outside, we could offer them that $74,000 that you just offered. More than happy, it could be TBD, which may make more sense as I'm thinking about it when we do these submissions, because again, if it is someone internal and they're entitled to promotion, it may end up being a higher salary than what's listed there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Ferraro Santana. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I guess, to clarify, or actually, no, do we need a management and policy analyst? Or can we
Based on the
with
job title, I don't need a management and policy analyst, but I need a junior accountant. So, because again, it's primarily housed in the accounting office, which deals with all our general ledger functions. It deals with revenues, so I can accurately report the revenues. It deals with treasury items. It deals with the city audit. So that's kind of what our accounting office functions as.
Okay, so the analyst position really isn't necessary.
Not for this particular, I mean, we have them around the city, but for this particular division within my office, no, we don't need the policy analyst.
And I guess just out of curiosity, what would the management and policy analyst do? I mean, I know what an accountant does, but what in addition, I guess?
So the management and policy analyst is a broad role. Actually, was my title when I moved over to the budget office. So it really works on budgetary aspects, so forecasting budget numbers, working with departments on financial policy, working with the budget director on financial policies and procedures. So again, it's really more of that budget analyst type of role, which again, it was when the position was first created prior to my arrival, I believe in like the mid 2000s, it was primarily housed in the budget office because that's what the work did. So if you think about it, it's more like a budget analyst type of role than an accountant role.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? I have one, Mr. Gorman. I'm just thinking about this from a strictly compliance-focused standpoint, which is if we amend our budget to change the title and then we leave a salary figure either indeterminate or TBD, what does that mean for whether or not our budget is actually in compliance with what's required of our budgets?
So generally, we would be in compliance because when it comes to hiring, this happens a lot. What happens is it's usually dictated by the end of year transfer, or it is dictated by the next budget cycle, often based on hiring rules or whatever the case is. You know, when you see the action report, it may be slightly higher than what is budgeted for whatever circumstance that may have arisen. So a lot of times to be in compliance, it is included in that year-end transfer of where you see negatives and positives and things like that. Because again, hiring is dictated by a number of rules that's established by civil service or a bargaining unit contract. The other mechanism that we also have is the transfer committee. The transfer committee at times, we haven't met in a while, but at times the transfer committee, which is set by ordinance, can deal with, based on the new amount, anything below $25,000 now is the new amount that went in conjunction with the purchasing ordinance, but anything below 25,000 could be established by the transfer committee as well. So you have a few different mechanisms to bring the budget into compliance by the year end. But again, some of this is unknown until you do the actual hiring, which is the process.
Yeah. I guess I'm just more comfortable with a number in the slot where a number is expected versus no number at all or 3 letters TBD.
Okay.
That could, I don't know if that's.
I think what we can do, I mean, obviously it would be who's interested in the position. Is it going to be internal only? Is it this? I think what I can do is, Mr. Chair, we can certainly look at the numbers, and if it needed to be amended during the, if it was to go before the full board and amend it, I think we can work out a number based on the scenario I think of that may have the highest impact from a monetary standpoint.
Any additional information on that point would be appreciated. Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, we're going to move forward in our agenda. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? And our one member of the public is letting me know that he does not. Although I think we also have reported here, so that, no. one member of the public, 3 members of the public that we're talking about. Thank you, Mr. Gormley, for that. We are now going to take a 5-minute comfort break, or in my case, coughing really loudly break, and we'll be back to finish our agenda, which has the OPEB item and the 2 months. 5 minutes.
That kind of structure.
Best. I need this. I know. I should have brought one, but I just put my coat over my
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
You want my jacket?
I don't know which is close.
Yeah, you want my jacket?
Here, stop video. Here it is.
Tomorrow, Lord Jesus.
I guess we got it on pause. Oh well.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm gonna get in here and work this now.
All right, go ahead. I'm not.
I'm gonna call you when I do it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'll be right back. Excuse me 1 second. President Walker Myers. I need you. Oh, you need me? Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you.
Remember Hagar? It's a church group there. It's the women that gave out all this, the books and the uniforms at the block party. Yeah, they're creating a women's group. They're asking, to support from the community. And they said, well, can you get the author from our area just to come and just hear what we're trying to do for a half an hour? But I know you've got a busy schedule. Would you be able to?
When?
It's Wednesday, maybe.
So Wednesday I have, Wednesday.
6 to 6:30.
I have litigation settlement and then I have downstairs. Yeah. Wednesday, focus, yeah.
So, any questions? If you ever had time and you could even maybe on a Zoom or something, so that they can share what they're trying to. It's just about if they want to support women in the community, right? So they to get women of status like.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna do nothing with it now. I don't wanna be involved.
No,
Listen.
no, you can listen. No, all they want you to do is listen. I mean, I don't want to be active either, but they want to get away.
Well, that's you.
I know, I'm a member of the church. Just to hear what they're offering for the women in the community. It's open to anybody, any woman in the community that wants to participate. And I still keep them on the hopes that they can come. Oh, sure. Keep them on the hopes that they can come to school.
Yeah. No, I can, you gotta just tell me.
Yeah. I'll just let them know that, yeah, I approached them, but I ain't gonna be able to be there either.
Yeah, no, Wednesday, we have. I got litigation, so I'm gonna be running from.
One to the other.
Yeah. I think this year. If that's on the way.
What I'll do is I'm gonna they sent me something like a 1-page introduction. Yeah, somewhere what they want to do. I'll just sort of sit right now. So I'm busy. So.
Did you get the how much toilet is it's postponed, right? Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Jerry Poole called me.
Yeah. Frank just texted me and said it's going on. Frank, we ain't gonna be out there. It's gonna be snow.
Yeah. And he felt like he's gonna block the snow. Mr. Poole.
I just said it.
Yeah. Jerry Poole called me today.
You think it's really gonna be?
They're saying 6 to 12 inches.
But you know, every time they say that,
I put that in your mind. Get in and out. You know, where's my girl say? You got to stay. Wow. Wow. And that way you're on. A phone is dying again for the second time today. The cord is back on for. Well. You got my message last week when you sent me that text, right, Sean? Yeah. So you asked Sean about that.
Yep.
What? Oh, yeah. I'll be here.
And with the management sat there and they said, 10 to 14 pages of freaking out.
You did that?
No, I said.
It's a good. And you hate it? They're always good.
We are coming back into session. I believe this next item, the remainder of the agenda features our Director of Management and Budget, maybe our Comptroller as well. The next item is in regards to OPEB Trust, an amendment or revision to the trust document. And so we are quite eager to hear all about it. Names and addresses for the record, please.
Michael Dormany, 45 Jefferson Road, Stratford, Connecticut, City Budget Director.
Dr. Christy Samperi, 222 Ashland Street, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511, City Controller.
Thank you both for being here, and we welcome you to your employ in the city.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the ordinance that you have before you is amending the current OPEB declaration that was passed in 2010 by the Board of Alders. Just so everyone knows, OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, which are benefits other than pension. So this has to do with retiree health care for City of New Haven employees. Currently, retiree health care is paid from our self-insurance account as part of the medical benefits that we report on a monthly basis and report on yearly. Part of that number includes retiree medical, which is OPEB. So in April of 2010, the then controller submitted what was in your packet as the Declaration of Trust, which was done based on government accounting standard board changes, or better known as GASB, 43 and 45. So back in 2010, what that change did was it said that municipalities and states had to report on the OPEB liabilities within your annual city audit. So what we ended up doing was also establishing a trust, because what the trust can do is the trust can limit the liabilities on the city itself related to OPEB.
We're good.
Okay. So back in 2010, the trust was established, and based on how the Board of Alders passed that declaration of trust, the sole person responsible for that trust was the city controller. When it was established, when the trust was established, the initial deposit was about $225,000 in 2010. And then from a budgetary standpoint, each fiscal year, we budgeted about $15,000 to $25,000 each year to deposit into that trust. Around 2018, during Mayor Hart's administration, myself and then Controller Darrell Jones looked at the OPEB trust and the liability at that point, and we actually increased that budget from $15,000 to $405,000. Which is what has been going in each subsequent year as the budget. So again, OPEB Trust deals with retiree medical. Why are we submitting an amended document to you now? Because what we want to do is we want to amend the trust to create a committee which is comprised of city employees appointed by the mayor and bargaining unit members who contribute to the OPEB trust. And again, one of the things that we've established in contract negotiations over the last 10 to, I believe, 10 years is for employees to contribute a portion of their gross pay to this trust account. So right now, employees in most city bargaining units and executive management, any executive management employee who came up through the union and maintained, the retiree healthcare and things like that, such as myself, contribute to that OPEB trust as well. So it's 1.25% goes into that OPEB trust each fiscal year, along with the city's contribution. So again, one of the reasons we wanted to create and amend this trust was because we need to also create a committee that can do the investment of the funds. And again, we think that with bargaining unit members, it was good to include them as committee members as well, because they are contributing a portion to the trust as well. So the committee, based on the trust, would consist of 8 members, 5 appointed by the employer, and then 1 representative of the police union, and 2 other union members as decided amongst the union leadership. So again, that is the committee makeup. What you have before you was drafted by Withers Bergman. That is the city's tax attorneys. And the reason we had those attorneys do it is they are very familiar with doing trust accounts. And they make sure that we are in compliance with any IRS standards, any GASB standards, and any other GAAP, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, any other standards as well. So this was fully vetted by our tax attorneys as well. So the purpose of establishing the trust committee is, again, the investment. Right now, the bank balance in this OPEB trust is $9.4 million. Again, that's just sitting in a bank account, so it's earning very little interest or, excuse me, interest or dividends or anything like that. So again, the purpose of the committee would be to act as the investment of this trust. So that means hiring an investment manager, meeting most likely quarterly as set up, and looking at the overall investments. This committee does not have budgetary authority, so they could not tell the city that, you need to budget $2 million instead of $405,000, or anything like that. Again, the purpose of this committee is to start to invest these funds. Just to give you a sense, in fiscal year 22, the retiree healthcare cost was $29 million across the board for all bargaining units. In fiscal year 23, it was $30 million. So again, we only have $9.4 million sitting in this particular account. In order to start utilizing these funds to help contribute to paying these costs, we need to start investing it, basically. So I believe I have covered everything related to why we are submitting an amendment to this trust. Again, this was first established in 2010. The original declaration of trust also said that any subsequent amendments to that declaration needed to be approved by the Board of Alders, which is another reason we are submitting the amended document for review. And again, sorry, again, the balance is 9.4 million. We would love to start building that up. Again, I gave you the retiree healthcare cost numbers. Obviously, with the current balance, you could use that all in 1 year, which is not what we would want to do. I think it's going to take, this is going to be a long-term solution to building up that OPEB trust and then also reducing the city's liability as well, which is reported in the city's annual report. Sorry, the city's annual audit, which is done by our external auditors. So Dr. St. Pierre, I don't know if you just want to introduce yourself really quickly and add anything.
Sure. So my background is in investments. My entire career was spent at Merrill Lynch. I started in the Greenwich office. I worked on a $5.6 billion team.
Thank you.
I worked on a $5.6 billion team. I managed the day-to-day finances of our portfolio. So I am versed in portfolio creation, asset reallocation, portfolio management, wealth management, budget analysis. So $9.4 million sitting in a bank account earning 0.001%, when the interest rates right now on just sitting in cash is about anywhere between 5.0 to 5.3 or 5.4 is just ludicrous. So creating a committee that we can invest these funds and invest these funds prudently so that the cost of healthcare can be minimized from our current employees or prior employees makes sense.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and we'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Excuse me, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now have questions from committee. I see Alder Ferraro Santana and then Alder Punzo.
Thank you. The question that I have is, why when they set up the trust, and I'm very familiar with trusts, that they would not have entertained a fiduciary? I'm just trying to make sense of it because that's usually what goes hand in hand with the trust. I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to what was done back in 2010. I know the GASB rules back then were pretty fresh when it came to OPEB. As you know, accounting standards change pretty much every year. So, you know, we're trying to keep up. I know in 2018, we looked at this very issue as well. 2019 in this very issue as well. For other reasons, it didn't materialize internally until now to submit to this board. But the only assumption I could make is that the rules at that time, there must have been a reason why they only designated the controller as the sole trustee. It could have been the GASB rules at that time.
Okay. I'm not sure when. I just know that I've always seen them hand in hand. And my next question is that couldn't the fiduciary have been, like you said, the controller or someone else in that designee to do with it? Why do we have to have a committee and hire a consultant? Because trusts don't usually work like that. So I'm just trying to understand why that we have to have a committee to do that.
I think one of the areas that we've been looking at is because we do have union membership that contributes to this trust as well, just having some of their input as well. Especially like the police, for example, were one of the first unions to agree to this from a collective bargaining standpoint. I believe they agreed in like 2013, where other unions didn't agree until around 2016, around that time, 2016 or 17. So I think, you know, looking at it from the membership standpoint as well, and just making sure like there's enough input from individuals related to this, even though it's not money coming back. As Dr. Samperi said, we are looking to, this can help offset some of the medical costs, especially when it comes to negotiations and what an employee's cost share is, you know, and what the city's cost share is as they're paying for medical. So again, that's kind of why the committee was established. A lot of times with trusts like these, there often is a committee. So for example, we have another one for paraprofessionals at the Board of Education. They have what's called a paraprofessional money purchase plan. There's a committee established for that as well that looks at the investments and the legal side of that paraprofessional pension plan. So again, with things like this, there's also often a committee, so you also don't have one person kind of just controlling the entire fund as well.
Got it. Thank you. All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Now we'll have Alder Punzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when in fact this committee is formed, I mean, obviously the selection of the committee members would have to be kind of selective to have some kind of skill and investment because they are dealing with, you know, a lot of money. So who would make the appointments? Would they be interviewed or? Not sure how that would work.
So on the employer side, it's generally the mayor, and in talking to the mayor, I think feels some of your same sentiment as Dr. Samperi mentioned some of her accolades. Clearly she has that investment expertise. When it comes from the union membership side, that's kind of up to the union membership itself, between the various unions to kind of select the individuals that have those expertise there. But from the city standpoint, it's the mayor who would kind of select the members to serve on this committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Punzo. Next is Alder Walker-Myers, followed by Alder Festa.
You can skip me, Mr. Chair. I forgot my question. I didn't write it down.
Well, if you remember Alder Walker-Myers, just let us know. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Personally, I think this is way overdue, and I think many of us who have served on this committee have mentioned how some of these saving account amounts should be invested to see a better return. So a couple of things. One is the interest that we're earning on this money. Why is it so low when typically you can negotiate with your bank if you have, it may be for a short term higher interest. So I'm not understanding why it's so low for 9.4 million.
Yeah. So if you
would move the microphone, thank you.
So if you understand, banks are in the business of giving out loans. So that they're not in the business of investing. So they give out loans. The interest rates on the bank side is usually always very low because they're loaning out that money. However, they do have CDs and interest that have a little bit higher, but when you deal with brokerage firms have access to different institutional funds that have a higher interest rate, especially as a money market.
Okay.
It's always been like that. The bank side has always had lower interest rates than brokerage firms.
So we have it in a brokerage firm or
you have it in a bank.
So, okay, help me understand one thing, because a bank, you can negotiate with a bank for higher interest. I know because my husband has. And going from like 0.002 to more like 2 point something is at least better than the 0.00.
Right, but it's still not as good as what you would get in a brokerage firm.
Correct.
Now,
yes.
Only people that know that you can negotiate it, because the banks aren't going to tell you that you can negotiate it. They're not going to give you a higher interest rate.
But I would think we would know that.
So I can't speak before the last 3.5 years when I was doing this, but what I can tell you is, especially during COVID, we definitely looked around because one of the areas that we're always looking at is banking, right? Where we keep most of our cash and everything else. We have, we can't keep all our cash in one place. I believe that's by city ordinance as well. But that is certainly something that we look at, is the various bank accounts. Unfortunately, when I came into the acting controller role, it was COVID. There was not high interest on bank accounts. We are just now rebounding, as I talk in the monthly as one of our revenue items is interest earned on bank accounts. That is just now rebounding. So I think, I can't speak before my time, but I know now we definitely looked at different rates in different bank accounts, but it may have been, 1% versus 1.05, which then the headache of moving that money probably wasn't, lined up with that interest that we were getting. The additional 0.005 basis points that we were getting on the interest. But again, OPEB is something that we're now looking at, especially that we've hired Dr. Samperi as the controller. So I think between her and I, we can kind of go with what you're talking about of how can we best utilize this money as an investment tool, right, to build it up. But yes, we looked at the banks, at least during my time, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah, and I hope we move, forward with better investment decisions versus it sitting in a bank regardless of what. We just discussed, but, so when, we're supposed to be hitting a recession. Right now, the market is really high. I don't see the recession that's coming. So how would we actually invest these funds when the market is high? Would you suggest bonds where it's less risky? I mean, obviously, the trust would have to approve any investments, correct? And you said you would hire an investment manager?
I mean, so this isn't really, the committee's not really established. A lot of committees that we have investment managers. I think what we would first want to do in the timeline is get the committee established and then look at those various avenues, right? Like an investment manager. I know Dr. Simperi has a lot of experience in this field as well. So I think what we're looking at is getting the committee established first and kind of looking at those avenues that you're talking about.
So the rules are not really established yet until the committee determines like goals and objectives and.
To be quite frank, we can't really establish any of the rules until the actual amended trust.
And that's what we're here to talk about.
Correct.
I could just tell you based off experience, what we were investing, at the time, the interest rates on the US Treasuries as well as the agency bonds were paying 5.24 to 5.5. We were locking that money in for a good year to 2 years. So that's a safe alternative to keep money that will, one, guarantee you interest, and two, it's backed by the federal government. Now, when the interest rates start to come down, which the Federal Reserve is actually meeting in March, which March signifies the end of the first quarter, June signifies the end of the second quarter. The analysts are stating that when March comes, that the Federal Reserve may not decrease the interest rates. They are predicting, though, and nobody knows this, and anyone that tells you that they do is a liar, that in June, that the interest rates may start to come down because it's just too expensive right now for people to live. And what they were trying to do is to slow down our economy. It was engineered this way. The Federal Reserve engineered this because the federal government pumped so much money into the system during COVID. So that would be one way, is to lock in that high interest rate would be to invest it in bonds as well as mutual funds. Low cost investments that have low fees, because you don't want the investments feed to death, so that the account, as soon as it generates money, it's paying out more and more fees.
Okay, so this committee will come together, obviously develop whatever rules they feel are appropriate with the guidance of hopefully professionals who know how to invest, etc. And you mentioned that, you know, hopefully they will choose people that are familiar with investing and capable of doing this, but do you know if there's going to be, well, I guess you wouldn't know. I don't know. Is there going to be an interview process for these folks? Or are we just going to trust them to invest wisely? Who's going to overlook it, I guess?
I mean, that's kind of the purpose of the committee, but I think if you're asking if there's going to be any sort of financial reporting or anything like that, it has to function like a true committee, right? So you have to post meeting notices, you have to post what you're talking about, the investments online, things like that. So I mean, there should always be some transparent aspect of it to where you can see how the investments are doing and, you know, how they were invested, things like that. So again, it's going to act as a true committee. So there has to be that transparency process as well.
Okay. And then, I mean, there's also, and I don't know if this even applies here, but the investment manager, whoever the portfolio person has a cut. Do you know what is the average percentage that they take? 1%, 2%?
It's usually 1%. Anything over 1%, they're ripping you off.
Okay.
So, and usually how it functions is that the more money that you invest with them, the lower the fee is. But across the board, when I was at Merrill Lynch just a couple of months ago, we always charge our clients a 1% fee. And that was towards everyone just to be equal. We never charged anything higher than 1% because we weren't in the business of ripping people off. And obviously, as their money invested and they brought in more assets and more assets, we would talk about lowering the fee. But it was usually, the unison was 1%.
And we have to keep that in mind as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Okay, I mean, like I said before, I think this is something that is long overdue, and we need to invest where we're getting a good return versus it's sitting with low interest. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Alder Hurt is on the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being with us on the investment. Will it be, are we looking at both short and long-term investments, or are we just looking for short-term, long-term?
Well, this outlook, this portfolio is long-term.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have a mix of short-term and long-term, and then as it progresses, you would reassess it. But for the bonds, I mean, if you're smart, you would invest in the bonds right now. It most likely 1 to 2 years, because anything past that, the interest rate is decreased, just to lock in that rate. Because like I said before, they're predicting that in the second quarter that the Federal Reserve will start to decrease the rates, which will mean that all the interest rates will start to come down.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Further questions from colleagues? Questions that have just arrived in your brain, or questions that you recall that you forgot earlier?
I'll catch you in the next one.
I have a couple questions. Mr. Gormley, to the best of your recollection, do all of the collective bargaining agreements now have employee contributions to OPEB?
No, not all. Bargaining units have the contribution, but that has certainly been something that the labor director has been working on as she's negotiating our city contracts, and then we're also working, looking at working with the Board of Ed, who any of their employees who take our retiree medical as well.
And the funds that are generated from those contractual employee contributions, they just go into the fund. They're not designated for retired members of their bargaining unit or something like that. Correct.
So right now, again, the funds are just sitting in a bank account per IRS standards, GASB standards. Those funds, because it is an actual established OPEB trust, can only be used for to offset retiree medical costs. But again, since it's not built up enough to kind of help us offset those costs, it's really just been getting that small interest, right?
If the city experienced economic distress and fiscal hardship, could the city decide to reallocate these funds to some other purpose?
No, not the OPEB funds, because again, it's an actual established trust, so there's rules. We can't just say we're going to take that money for operating.
The city would have to dissolve the trust.
There's a whole
go through a
process that would require our attorneys if we dissolve the trust.
Okay, that's what I figured. Why do you want us to give this committee authority to change the trust document going forward without our subsequent approval?
So a lot of the committees and that's pretty standard language in talking to our tax attorneys, because a lot of these committees are basically self-operating. Again, there are decisions that they make right there at the committee level that would require, yes or no approval right then and there. Or if we did get, or if we needed to change the makeup or whatever of the committee for whatever reason, So that way that can be done at the committee level approval. I mean, it's really done so we don't hold up any of the processes that may come about related to this trust.
So I understand that you want to empower the committee to make certain decisions on its own. That's what they're impaneled to do. But this ordinance amendment, this order rather, would empower them to make amendments to the declaration of trust.
Correct.
Kind of like the foundational document establishing.
Correct.
So if they wanted to establish a different number for quorum, if they wanted to just change their operating rules, this would enable them to do that.
Correct.
Which is above and beyond, or different, say, than just the decision of what feedback you give to the fund manager and what elections you make for fund allocations, right?
Correct. I mean, it's basically empowers the committee to amend the trust document as you see it in front of you. If you were to pass this document, then the committee at some point, if there was something that came about, could amend the trust document, correct?
Mm-hmm. I just see that there's a distinction between the day-to-day functioning of the committee and the kind of decisions that it's going to be advising or making votes about, for example, and then actually amending the document that establishes who they are, what their functions are, how they are supposed to operate.
So again,
It's like saying to a board commission, it's one thing for the city plan commission to change its bylaws, but there's an ordinance, there's a special act, there's a charter that they don't get to amend.
Right. Mm-hmm. Understood. So again, that's why we're coming before this board. We work with the tax attorneys and there's, this is language that is in other trusts that they've worked on and other documents. But again, if this was something that was changed before this board or whatever the case is, listen, I'm a process person. If this board, wanted to look at that particular language, say, we want to change this, which is within this board's purview, then that's what we do. I think the main goal is to establish some type of new declaration of trust so that way we can start working on the fund. So I hear what you're saying because basically it empowers the committee to change the trust document without necessarily having to go before the board, which you could consider a material change to the trust document. So again, this was language that we worked on with the tax attorneys, but if this board were to feel the change, then that's the process that we roll with.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman.
I have a question.
I understand, and I'm going to call on you in a moment. That's all I have for now. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Gorman, that means that if they have the committee has the ability to change language within, who has oversight over this committee for major decisions? Is it where they have to come back to us as a board for final decisions on anything they change and or decide, or they're autonomous to go ahead?
So no, that was the subsequent amendment language that Alder Chair Marchand was talking about. Basically, they have the right to change the trust document at the committee level.
Okay.
So.
And we don't have any say so.
The way that it was written at this moment, for those changes, it would just be approved at the committee. No, it wouldn't come back before the board.
Okay with that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further questions on this item? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do other municipalities have trusts, or do you know of any that do and how they function?
I don't know how they function, but I know other municipalities that have trust. I believe the oversight is different based on the municipality that you're in. But as far as knowing the day-to-day operations and how they function, I did not get into the weeds with those municipalities.
And what has their success rate been?
Through the chair, I'll have to get back to you with a few examples because some municipalities have had a trust that has been functioning with the investment tools and everything else much longer than we've had. And they've been set up at different times, so it hasn't been like a standard across the board, but I can try to get some additional information.
Mr. Chair, through you, I think it's important for us to have an idea of how other municipalities function with something similar to this.
So noted.
Thank
We'll
you.
follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, welcome
Thank you.
to
Thank
the
you.
role.
Thank you.
Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? OPEB trusts. Seeing none for the time being, we will move on to the final two items in our agenda, which are the monthly financial reports for the months of November and December 2023. And we have some paper coming our way. We'll just take a moment to get that in everyone's hands. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As normal, I'm just going to skip over the November monthly report as noted on your agenda and go right to the.
I know it's repetitive, but who are you? Where did you?
I thought it would just go from the last 4 times.
We're going to be thorough tonight.
Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, Brentwood, Connecticut, Budget Director.
Dr. Christy Samperi, 222 Ashland Street, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511, City Controller.
Okay, you may resume.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you, you have the figures from the December 2023 monthly report. Again, I'm gonna just go through some of the high level areas within the report. As you know, the report is about 100 pages at this point, so I didn't want to. I'll just go through the relevant sections, which is really our general fund.
Mr. Gormley, I'm so pleased that there are page numbers. Very helpful.
I've learned over the years. Within the December 2023 monthly report, we are reporting a deficit, which I talked about at the last time we met, which was last year. We are reporting about a $9 million deficit due to primarily we're looking at the Board of Education and then some reductions on revenue. We are looking at mitigating this deficit along with the Board of Education itself. As I always mention, the monthly report is a snapshot in time. That's what we're looking at that particular period. And again, we're looking at just different mitigation efforts, from looking at expenditures to seeing how we can increase any of our revenue items within this fiscal year. So the first page just kind of lists the general fund section of $9 million. And then below that, you would see if that $9 million deficit was to materialize, what the effect would be on the general fund balance, which would look at going from 43.9 million, which is the unaudited starting balance, to 34.9 million. Looking at the revenue section, we're going to just go to page 4, and again, I'll go through some of these sections. Property taxes, we just finished the second half of collections. We're currently running reports. We're still looking at posting various items such as bank mortgages and things like that, so we don't have exact figures yet, but as of December of 2023, we were reporting exceeding that budget by about $1.8 million in taxes. The last few years, we've exceeded that budget between $3 million and $7 million. And that's primarily due to delinquent collections. We've had the last few years have been really good on delinquent collections with people catching up on their taxes, especially with COVID. So general property taxes is an area that we're looking at as far as how we're going to do on it from a collection standpoint to see. And again, that's one of those items that if we get above the $1.8 million, because again, we're being very conservative, that would help mitigate that deficit that you see in the beginning page. Moving on to page 5 is state revenues. We've received most of our state revenues within the city's general fund. You know, we still have a few outstanding, such as PQOP funds of $5.5 million. Those usually come in towards the end of the fiscal year. Education cost sharing is something we receive 3 to 4 times during the fiscal year. So that's why all of that money has not been recognized yet. But based on the state website, we are looking at receiving about $142.8 million in education cost sharing for this fiscal year. So we're not expecting any lapses on any state grants that are counted in the general fund. Looking at page 6, again, these are a lot of our local revenue items. So localized revenue, our major items are really building permits and meter receipts. So going towards the bottom half, and working with our building official, he is projecting about $14 million out of the $15 million budget in building permits for this fiscal year. So that is a slight shortfall in our budget when you compare the budget to what we're forecasting for that fiscal year. But again, this number can change. Building permits are always based on the number of projects. More towards the March, May, and June is really when we really start ramping up our conversations in the budget office, because that's when a lot of projects really begin during that time period. Parking meters, we're looking at being right on target with budget at $3.7 million. So again, individuals paying their parking meters as they're parking downtown. Section 4 is our interest income. Again, this kind of goes back to our previous discussion on investments. We have seen a slight increase since COVID in what we're realizing in our bank balances to where we're exceeding budget in that particular category. Now, that is one area that we really do budget conservatively on, because again, interest in bank accounts where we keep our cash is dictated by the market. As you've seen by COVID, it can drastically drop at any time. So that's why we're very conservative on that particular budget. The only other major one is under received from fines, which is our parking tax. We've talked about this throughout the last year. That's a budgetary item that we're looking at, especially in this upcoming budget cycle. Now, there is a correlation, a slight correlation to meters. As people are paying their meters, that's less meter tickets that are being issued. Now, traffic and parking does enforce other type of safety violations, but just to keep that correlation within those two revenue categories. So essentially, the more money people are paying in their meters, the less tickets that we're writing for expired meter violations. We did see some vacancies also within that department throughout the year, as well as in regards to parking enforcement. So again, we did have a few less bodies during the year within that category. And I am going to skip page 7, the next page, right at the very bottom. So when you look at it from a budgetary standpoint, we are looking at exceeding budget from an overall total revenue standpoint by about $1.1 million for the fiscal year. From the revenue side, when you compare all our Revenues, when you compare the budget to what we're actually forecasting. And I did not mention, but wanted to point out, one of the areas that we're also looking at on this page is sort of in the middle, but, you know, fixed assets. We did have some plans on sales of fixed assets for this year. We did budget 3.1 million. We're probably looking at $1.5 million or less related to that. We're currently working with economic development on the final number, if anything is going to materialize going into the next budget cycle for that category. But again, when you compare all the revenues, we're looking at about $1.1 million over budget. The next page looks at the city expenses. As you can see, I know it's a little small, but we tried to fit a lot of information on this page, but we're looking at about $10 million in exceeding budget on the expenditure side. So that's really where the deficit comes from, is really on the expenditure side. Again, the Board of Education, out of that $10.1 million in exceeding expenditures, is about $5.8 million. We're looking at working with the Board of Ed CFO on what their actual deficit will be ending the year, how we can help mitigate it. On our side, we, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, are reviewing all expenditures, what is actually necessary for this fiscal year. Just as a caveat, the one thing we have not stopped is hiring, because we know how stretched thin all these departments are currently in the city with the sheer number of vacancies. So we're really looking at non-personnel costs when we talk about expenditure savings for this fiscal year. Our two biggest departments are police and fire. We are actually projecting them on budget, even with the overage and overtime that we see. We still have lapsed salary that is covering that overtime cost for the fiscal year in both departments. On the city side, what we've experienced is actually deficits in our employee benefits section, which also deal in our employee insurance. Our insurance is really dictated by the market itself. The same way your personal car insurance may go up for no reason when you have an accident. We also experience just our general policies go up. So we did see a very large increase in some of our liability policies this year, which, you know, I mentioned at other meetings as well. We are looking at medical costs. We did see in the last couple of months an increase in medical costs on the city side as well. So that does affect the city's general fund contribution to the medical fund itself. So those are certain areas that we're looking at on the city side. But again, we are looking at mitigating this deficit in the past years. In the past, we've reported deficits and have actually been able to mitigate those and end up in surplus. So we're looking at trying to utilize those same tactics to do the same thing as well. So. And I'm just gonna go right to.
Do you want to make a note about page 11, Mr. Cormier?
Yes, sir.
It seems related to our.
Seems related right to your, our previous discussion, but in the monthly report, we do report on OPEB contributions by the city and by local bargaining units. So what we tried to do here is, this is really just a snapshot in time since fiscal year 16-17. So again, it's not going to add up to the $9.4 million. Because it also doesn't include any interest that accrued or anything like that. But you can kind of get a sense of what bargaining units are contributing to that overall fund from a monetary standpoint per fiscal year. So again, some of these are going to start out really low because they were negotiated at different times per different bargaining unit agreements. So the last item I'm going to talk about is on page 13, which is what I just mentioned, our medical fund. So again, our medical fund is one of those unpredictable items from a budgetary standpoint, right? We did see a couple of decreases we did see a decrease primarily in September, but overall we have been up month over month on the medical side. So we're working with our medical consultant, my office in HR, on driving trends towards those increase in medical costs, essentially. So we're working on, is it due to prescription drugs? Is it certain medical conditions that are driving our cost? So our consultant, along with Anthem and HR, we're just awaiting their responses in the analysis to see what's driving our costs, to see if there's any way we can mitigate it, as I've said in the past, along with, other controllers, as well as, you're really never going to lower the cost of healthcare, right? There's just so many different factors that go into that. What you can try to do is bend the curve of healthcare, try to keep it streamlined. We've worked on that during different areas during union negotiations between, high deductible health plans, the health incentives, things of that nature. And we have a really robust employee wellness program that my office manages along with human resources. So we do have these different areas that we do encourage employees to go towards, and then also any incentives that Anthem is providing as well. But we have seen an increased cost in medical, which is outlined on page 13. And then page 14 kind of just gives you the revenue portion of the fund, but the overall fund, we are projecting a balance between all the revenue sources and even seeing the increased expenditures. So again, there's a lot of information in the monthly report, especially for anyone new to this committee. I always encourage to look at the monthly report. It does give, this is really just a condensed summary of what you see, but we report on ARPA spending, different special fund grants, personnel, just different areas of the city. But again, unfortunately, we were reporting a deficit as of December, but, I'm very hopeful we can at least mitigate it. And always remember, this is, as I mentioned, the snapshot in time. And in looking at budgeting and looking at forecasting, it's an art and a science all at the same time, because anything can swing the pendulum in any direction, a positive direction or a negative direction. So that's why we try to be thorough in our monthly reporting. But again, the next day, the numbers could be off because we found something out that swung the pendulum in either direction. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gormley. We appreciate your presentation. Questions from committee members? Alder Fester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, it's one regarding, we had the ribbon cutting for the health department, which means we're out of where they were, or are we? What, do we still have an obligation with them, or is that rent now back in our pocket?
No, so during this budget cycle, we budgeted 6 months of a lease payment. So that incentivized everyone involved to get the health department out by December 31st, or else there would have been an additional cost that I would not have been happy about. So we are fully out of 54 Meadow Street from the health department standpoint, and yes, that cost does not exist anymore.
Remind me what the rent was?
For 6 months, I want to say we were paying about $250,000. I just remember for a full year, it was about $450. So that $250 did include it wasn't just the base rent, but other things that went with that lease. But it was generally for a full year past about 450,000.
Well, that's 450,000 minus whatever expenses we have in the new building, but it's still somewhat of a savings, so
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues about this report? Seeing none, we thank you very much for your time this evening on this item and all the other items you've been here for.
Oh, we're done.
Okay. You are dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Very
night.
much. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on these items? And for a second time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on these two monthly financial reports? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on these monthly financial reports? Let me make a final call for any member of the public who wishes to testify excuse me, on any of the items that we've spoken about this evening. Seeing none, a motion is appropriate.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we close the public session of this meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the public portion. It's been seconded. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are now in deliberations. Can I have a motion on item number 1?
Chair,
Alder Hurt.
make a motion that we move item 1.
Second.
Item 1 has been moved and seconded. Discussion of the motion. Excuse me, discussion of the motion. Alder Ferrara Santin.
I just want to make sure that the contract for the police department is taken out of the ordinance, the resolution, so that it's clear that it shouldn't have been there.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. So let me just say something. Would you like to make a motion to amend the item to remove the words New Haven Police Services at the end of the order and replace them with Central Facilities Portfolio?
Correct, that's what I would.
Do I have a motion
Yes.
to amend?
Yes, you have a motion to amend.
The motion to amend thus has been made and seconded. Discussion of that motion. Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, so we fixed the typo by amending it formally, which is a way to make sure it happens. Discussion of the item as amended. Alder Walker Myers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in support of this item because I think it was explained very well why it makes sense to do the multi-year agreement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alder Walker Myers, further discussion of the motion as amended. I too am in favor of this and I urge colleagues to vote yes. Any further discussion? Alder Hurt.
I am also in favor of this. I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Alder Hurt.
I make a motion to remove item number 2.
Second.
Item number 2 has been moved and seconded. Excuse me, discussion. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually am in favor of this item. It sounds like it could actually improve productivity, proficiency, and maybe get us on a track to be I's dotted, T's crossed, and better flow of with the open gov of any purchases made. So I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further comments on this item? Alder Hurt.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also in favor of this item with the, with your permission, I would like to make sure that we found out if bonfire stays on how much it's gonna be on a monthly basis.
You'd like to make that request to the chair?
Through the chair, yes.
So noted. Yes. Further discussion of this item? I also recall during this item, I made a request to have more information about the figures and what the other competing respondents were charging to help us make judgments about the relative value of the successful respondent. So that will be another item of follow-up. Any further discussion of this item, which has been moved with a favorable recommendation? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion passes. It will move forward with a favorable recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Alder Hurt.
I'll make a motion to remove item number 3.
Second.
Item number 3 has been moved and seconded. Discussion of this motion. Alder Ferrara Santana.
I would like to propose that instead of the $140,000 transfer of expenditure, that we make it 128, since she feels that she's confident that we can get a individual to fulfill that salary. And if it isn't, at some point, we can always do it through a transfer.
Would you like to propose that as an amendment?
Yes. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion has been made to amend this item to reduce the amount of transfer to up to $128,000 from its current language of up to $140,000. So that's the motion to amend that's before us. Discussion of that motion to amend. Alder Festa and Alder Walker-Myers.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I think we should go a little higher at least. I'm torn with this because we do need a little bit of wiggle room just in case. And if we don't use it, it comes back anyway, I believe, right? Goes back into, it's not spent, put it that way. Maybe we could come to a compromise with something in between the 128 and the 140, and we can determine what that fair amount might be. Maybe it's 134 instead of 140, or maybe others have suggestions, but I feel a little bit of more wiggle room is necessary, particularly if we're looking for someone to fill a position that might be already difficult to fill.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further discussion of this amendment, Alder Walker-Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In thinking about the amendment, I actually think 140 is the ceiling, right? And we've been sitting through numerous conversations about how the amount of money that we offer for positions sometimes aren't enough, right? And I do understand that the current person that was in it was about 128 or around that amount. But I do think we should take into account even if somebody within a city got the job and they're going to get a promotion, that we're going to have to be able to give them a little bit more than 128. Nobody's going to go for it if it says 128 if I'm making 130. So I just think we should probably leave it at the ceiling, because it's going to come back to us anyway to say basically what it is through the budget, I believe, right? So that's why I think that we should actually just leave it where it is, because we're heading to March. And if it gets, I hope, I'm going to say, it gets filled that fast. But in our experience, it takes a little while, to get the positions filled. So I would have to say that I am not in favor of that amendment at this present time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Walker-Myers. Alder Funzo.
It was answered. Thank you.
Alder Funzo had a question, but it was answered. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also am not in favor of that amendment. I think what we need to do is keep it where it can be marketable, where it looks favorable for a candidate to want to apply and to. We've been in these discussions where we're not competitive with other municipalities, And I think this will be a good segue into being compatible.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you very much. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marchand. Leaving the salary, I'm in favor of leaving the salary where it is at that 140 number, so that, in the offering, Ms. Regina said, the 140 is the max. Working up towards that in some degree, being at 140 gives us a little more room for discussion, and agreement on a salary. So I'm in favor of leaving it, the number at that 140, and, giving them the ability to work towards it if so be the case,
Thank you, Alder Hamilton.
Uh-huh.
Further discussion of the motion to amend, Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too must say I'm in favorable to leave it at 140, provided we can find someone from our own town, New Haven, to fulfill the needs of this position. So I will be in favor of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. I believe we've heard from everybody about the motion to amend. So if you agree with the motion to amend, you'll say aye when I call the roll, and if you don't, you'll say nay when I ask for that. All in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye. Oh, sorry, I'm new.
So the amendment was proposed. Yeah, let's just double check because your statement is different than your vote. So the motion to amend was to bring it down to 128.
Right.
So if you're in favor of that, when I say all in favor, you'll say aye. If you don't agree with that, when I say all opposed, you'll say nay. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion does not carry. The item is not amended in that way. Before we continue deliberations, I'm going to ask for a motion, which is to amend this item to correct the Scribner's error.
Mr. Chair.
So I'm going to ask for that motion after I finish describing, which is to change the language from, in the section 2, from the Chief Administrative Office, Emergency Management, Salary Account, etc., to the words, to the Mayor's Office, comma, Salary Account, period. Do I have a motion to amend it thus?
Yeah.
And motion to amend has been made and seconded. Any questions on that motion? Any statements? I'm going to say that I encourage colleagues to vote in favor of this motion to amend. It corrects a typo that needed to be corrected. So I think you want to ask a question, but you're not on the floor. So you're pointing out to, so what I did with that, Alder Farrar Santana, is I replaced all of those words with Mayor's Office, Salary Account, period, which means that those words are just.
Okay, so, all right, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Any further discussion of that motion to amend? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The amendment passes, which makes a correction that the staff recommended, and which seems appropriate. Discussion of the item as amended. Any discussion? Alder Walker Myers.
Sorry, my mind was hit. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say I'm in favor of this motion. I think it's important that the city look at the different things that our colleague from Ward 30 brought up about lateral moves and all of that. Because I think it's important to, one, show people that already work in the city that they have the ability to move up in a position like this, but I also think it's important to be able to get the best in the field. So I'm in favor of both things, I guess, and really stressing that I want us to do our due diligence to make sure we don't have the best of the best here already. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Walker Myers. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am in favor of this item, but I do want to put it on record that I really want them to make sure that we exhaust all efforts to find someone here within our city limits for this role. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Further discussion of this item? Alder Honda Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must say, I am also in favor of this item, but I also do stress that we do find someone out of 139,000 that we do have in the city of New Haven to fulfill the needs to this position or create a lateral change, which those are already in the emergency field, with police or fire, to move them up to the position. Because I think it would be great if someone that had been working hard and diligently in those positions for many years to be able to get a raise or a better position so that they can fulfill the needs of knowing what a disaster is, which they do, within our city, and able to be able to fully function that department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Further comments on the item? I'll just say, Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I'm in favor as well. I think it also brings us to compliance with the state, with ordinance, charter, whatever else was mentioned during what seems like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. But it does bring us to compliance, which is a good thing. I'm going to just reiterate what I said before. It just baffles my mind that out of 139,000 residents in the city, we can't hire from New Haven. I just would encourage that the city looks to hire New Haven residents versus outside of the city. I get that things are complicated. Work ethics are different than they were probably when we were growing up. Work environment is different. We also have, when you look at it, low unemployment, which is a positive. But again, I would encourage that we hire from within the city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further comments on this item? Further comments on this item? I will note for the record that I made requests of the Chief Administrative Officer to give us more information about the state law. And we heard that it likely requires this position to exist. But what else does it require of this position? And so I think we will get more information about that, which I think will be helpful for our consideration. Any further discussion of this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The cough is not part of the motion, but it's there to punctuate my statement. Do I have a motion on number 4?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move item number 4.
Second.
Item 4 has been moved and seconded. This is the reclassification of the position of senior sanitarian to sanitarian within the health department. Any discussion of this item?
I'm in support of the item, sir.
Alder Hamilton, you wish to speak? I guess you are in favor of it.
Yes, thank you, Chair Marchand. I am in support of the item, and yes, that's it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Further comments from colleagues? Further discussion? Alder Hurt.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I am in support of this item as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Further discussion? Alder Honda Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am also in support of this item. I like the way that they're going by starting from the bottom and moving to the top, which gives the opportunity for folks to excel and to move up the ladder.
Thank you, Alder Smith. Other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of this item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move item number 5.
Second.
This is item 5, which is where we're at, which is the junior accountant.
Second.
The item 5 has been moved and seconded. Discussion of the item. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of the item. I think Mr. Gormany explained exactly why this change would make sense. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further discussion of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Hurt. We're getting tired, folks. It has been, this is the first meeting of our finance committee in this term. So some folks are, speaking before they're technically called on, which is fine. But we'll tighten that up. Miss Alder Hurt. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I apologize. But I am in support of this item, and I urge all my colleagues to vote favorably.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Further discussion of this item. Alder Fester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We heard from Mr. Gormany that the previous title of Management Policy Analyst was vacant for an entire year, and it actually housed the accounting anyway, so it makes sense to have this revised to the junior accountant. And after he explaining all of this, Mr. Gormany, that is, it just made more sense to make the move. So I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Fester. Further discussion of this item. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion carries.
Mr.
Alder
Chair?
Hurt. Yes.
I make a motion that we move item number 6.
Second.
Item 6 has been moved and seconded. Discussion of this item. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honestly, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I'm ready to vote on this item without further information that we requested. This sounds like it's a really big step in moving in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. I think this is something that is long overdue, but I'm not sure who's going to be overlooking these investments for approval. And I feel that it needs another element and needs to come before us for that final approval versus just this committee of right now unknowns that will make these very important decisions in investing a huge chunk of change. So I don't want to encourage my colleagues to vote either way. I'm just not ready to support it without further information, as well as what role we will play in making this decision.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further discussion of this item. Alder Walker Myers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually want to make a motion to amend the language that said that it wouldn't, and I don't have because I'm not on the page. So maybe I should go to the page.
We'll give you a moment to do that and look forward to your amendment when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, I want to amend that language that gives them autonomy to just change the document. So what page is this on?
It's the last one. It's the last page.
And you can, Mr. Chair, if you may, you can find the right words that I'm looking for, actually. Because what I'm saying is, I want to change the language.
I understand.
Okay, there you go, thank you.
Yes, turns out I'm tired as well.
That's okay.
But we will do this. So let me call colleagues' attention to the document, which is the order. Our packets don't have page numbers, but it's, it's well into the packet, near the back.
Okay.
Second to last page. Thank you very much, colleagues. It's section 2, which currently reads, the OPEB committee will have the authority as outlined in the Declaration of Trust to make additional amendments from time to time to the Declaration of Trust, investment of funds, and the other matters related to the OPEB trust without the need for further approval of the alders. And I think what is a little bit difficult here is that we could amend that language or take it out, for example. But if that language is in the actual declaration, we would need to amend it there as well, which we don't. I mean, I looked at the declaration, it's 30 or 40 pages long, but I'm not prepared to surgically figure out where that language is. But I think, we could go ahead and move and amend the order, but I think we would need to do more than just that before taking the vote at the second reading, just to make sure there's no conflict between what this order says and what the actual trust document says.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will take responsibility to finding it in the declaration that you are representing by the second reading, but I would like to amend it here tonight. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I think, can I have an amendment? Can I have a motion to amend that would take this language in section 2 and change it to this, as I am now going to recite? The OPEB committee will have the authority, as outlined in the Declaration of Trust, to make investment of funds and other matters related to the OPEB trust, period. So that, do I have a motion to amend this?
Mr. Chair.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. So that's the motion to amend. Discussion of the amendment, which I am now going to discuss. Don?
What it is again, so
I will read it again.
please.
Essentially, in section 2, I'm removing any mention of the declaration. And then I'm removing the words without the need for further approval of the alders. So it would read thus. The OPEB committee will have the authority, as outlined in the Declaration of Trust, to make investment of funds, to make decisions around the investment of funds and other matters related to the OPEB trust, period. Did you get that, Don? I will definitely be willing to go through it again with you after the meeting.
And then the other matters related
To the OPEB trust, period.
to this trust, period. Okay.
Any questions about?
That section.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so that's the motion to amend. It's been made and seconded and clarified again for our staff who's capturing all this on our behalf. Discussion of the motion to amend only. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the motion is appropriate because it would not stop the committee from being able to do what is necessary within their purview. So I just think that it's important to to not unnecessarily remove the Board of Alders from different processes. So that's why I think the motion is appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further discussion, Alder Festa.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, in regard to, do we need to make mention of the alders at all? Or it's understood that it needs to come before this body? For example, that last line, without need for further approval of the alders, should we keep it with the need for further approval of the alders?
I don't think so, because the amendment that is being sought is to empower them to amend that document without our approval. If we remove that power, then they will still need our approval such as they're seeking now.
Okay,
So
as
no.
long, okay, and that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah.
I support the amendment as stated by you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
And
you,
encourage my
Alder
colleagues.
Festa. Further discussion of the amendment. Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do support the amendment as well.
Excellent. Further discussion of the amendment. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. The motion to amend carries. Further discussion of the motion as amended. Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Marchand. I'm in support of the item as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further discussion of the motion as amended. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Ayes carry it. It will move forward with a favorable. It will move forward as amended with a favorable recommendation. Although there's a little follow-up work to be done. Our president has volunteered to spearhead that effort to make sure that the document attached to that order reflects the intention of the amendment this evening. And if we need further actions to make that happen, we will undertake those actions for the second reading or at the second reading. So I have a motion on items 7 and 8.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to move items 7 and 8 together.
Second.
The motion has been made to recommend that the board read and file these items. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. And before any further motions are appropriate, I do have a quick announcement to make, which is to remind colleagues that we are on the doorstep of the budget process for the next fiscal year. And we have quite a lineup of meetings, which all of you should have received in your email. And I'm just going to quickly mention that our next meeting will be March 11th on Monday. That is a monthly meeting. It is also the budget overview meeting, where Mr. Gormany and others come and give us the high-level summary of the mayor's proposed budget for the next fiscal year. We usually get an update on the grand list at that point as well. On Thursday, March 14th, we will have our first public hearing in our first departmental workshop. March 21st, our second public hearing in our second workshop. April 8th, our third workshop and a monthly meeting. April 11th, our fourth workshop. April 18th, our third and final public hearing and our fifth workshop. And then on May 13th, that will be our monthly meeting plus deliberations. And then May 16th is set aside for deliberations if needed. Our special meeting on the budget is on Monday, May 28th, the day after Memorial Day. That is our budget calendar. We don't yet have it mapped out, which departments will go in which workshops, but we should have that in the next week or so. We'll send that to you, obviously, once that is finalized. As of this moment, I am thinking about having every meeting here. Our experience in recent years, at least, was that having public hearings in the public schools did not necessarily generate more participation. They did generate more tech problems and difficulties with hearing what people were saying. And so at this time, unless there's compelling evidence to do otherwise, all of our meetings are scheduled to take place here in chambers. So that is the upcoming budget process, and we'll have more to say about that as we get closer to it. Having said all that, a motion to adjourn is appropriate.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for your.